everybody, and welcome back to Where It All Began. Today, we have such an amazing guest. We are talking today with Jack Plotnick. Jack is an amazing performer, and not only does he do stuff on the stage, but he has also co-written and directed a hit Broadway musical called Disaster with Seth Rudetsky. I am so excited to be talking with him today. He's an Ohio native, and I am so excited to be talking with him. So let's get into it and talk with Jack and find out where it all began. Hello
Hello.
there. How are you?
Good.
So, welcome to Where It All Began. I'm very excited to be chatting with you today, for so many reasons. I know you do a lot of onstage, but offstage stuff as well, in the theater industry. So, I'm very excited to kind of hear how you fell in love with both sides of the table.
Oh, well,
Um,
thank you for having me. It's
yeah.
a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, like we were just talking about, my goal with the podcast is to kind of shine light on the people in our lives behind the curtain and the shadows that don't always get the mention, the teachers that helped us along the way and
Yeah.
created safe spaces for us when we needed them.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so if you're ready to roll, I'm ready to jump right in.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. So, like we were talking before, we're both from Ohio. You had a little more access being in the Columbus area, had a little bigger city to grow up in. So, what kind of artistic outlets were there for you in Ohio?
Let's see. That's such an interesting question. I am lucky that I grew up in Columbus. That's the capital of the state because, yeah, it's a big city in Ohio, and there's loads of opportunities to do theater, and the school system was great, and that's where I first discovered my interest in the performing arts, as they were called to us back then. I was obsessed with watching Saturday Night Live and the Carol Burnett show. And I had a teacher in fifth grade called Mr. O'Rourke, and he was such a great guy because, and I still to this day can't believe that he let me do this, but I asked him to stop all fifth grade classes once a month and let me do a sketch. And they did. And it's like, why? But they did. They gathered all the fifth grade class. Also, it was great too because in the middle of a class, I could say, "Mr. O'Rourke, Bobby and I want to go out to the hallway and work on our sketch," and he'd be like, "Okay." So we would get out of class that way. But we really were working on the sketch, which was generally a kind of takeoff on the weekend update section of Saturday Night Live. And yeah, so that was the first time that I had performed really, was in doing that in fifth grade. And then my sixth grade teacher was fantastic, Mrs. Rovitar. I love her so much. And I'm so sad that she passed away before I could tell her how much she meant to me because she really pushed her class to be creative with writing stories, lip syncing to songs. And they had a whole lip sync contest for all the was it all the sixth graders, I think. And I had, you know how sometimes when it's raining, they'll do recess indoors. And so this was kind of my second sort of discovery into performing was that one day when we had recess indoors, a record player was playing Dolly Parton's 9 to 5. And one of the girls had a shawl. Now, you're too young to know what a shawl is, or maybe you do, but it was
Hmm.
essentially like a blanket with a hole in it, and you put it over your head, and it was something that kept you warm. Anyway, so I put this shawl on and I put my hands here and I was pretending to be Dolly Parton, but then when it would go into the chorus, I would do this working 9 to 5. What a way. Because the whole joke about Dolly Parton for young kids back then was she's very, very bosomy. So the kids loved it. And I actually did that in front of the entire elementary school at the talent show and won, which yeah, I don't think you that yeah that I don't know that that would be cool nowadays. Anyway, so I kind of knew there was this far away thing called television shows I could watch, but I didn't really know how I could get involved until later that year in sixth grade, the high school performed their musical Oklahoma, and the elementary school was invited to watch it. And that was when my mind exploded because I was like, wait a minute, you can put on orange pancake makeup and do a show and sing. And So I just started in my dining room, had amazing acoustics. So I would just belt the song from that show. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. And now all of a sudden I realized I had this really big voice, which I didn't know. And so then I was like, I want to do theater. And so let's see. And then I discovered, where was it first? Oh, right. My community theater. I think community theater is a great way to get introduced to theater. And Worthington had a terrific community theater, and they happened to be doing a show called Working, which was written by the same people who wrote Wicked,
Oh,
except a
wow.
different show. It couldn't have been more different. It was just Working was just essentially based on a book where they interviewed people at work. And so it's just a series of monologues and songs about what your job is. So they're not going to turn that into a big movie. No. Anyway, so I got to play the newsboy, and that was my first time, I believe, on stage. And then I was hooked. So yeah, I loved it. So anyway, so that was Worthington Community Theater, and then during the summer we had a terrific theater called the Columbus Junior Theater, head by a woman named Helen Foshbog, who, looking back now, you might call her a hippie. Like she was, but she was just so great, so just came from love. And Columbus Junior Theater was very much based in doing works of, like, we did a Moliere show. The next summer they did Shakespeare. So it was a very artistic place in this big old, like, sort of house downtown. And it was just magical. It's a magical place. And I loved doing that summer. And then the next summer, I did Players Theater, was another community theater in Columbus. Later, it went professional, but they had a summertime children's theater, and that was they would do like hit shows like the boy musicals like The Boyfriend, which is what I did. And so very different vibe, but actually much closer to what being a musical theater performer in New York City was, because that's the life of a musical theater person. You're not generally doing Moliere. But it was cute because the two theaters kind of always had a competition, and they would show each other their shows. And you couldn't really, it was nice. You couldn't really compare them because it was so wildly different, the musical to the classic show. But I'm gonna stop droning on now because I forget your question. I was just trying to
No, you're
tell me
totally
my
fine.
start.
So did you come from a musical family, or were you the only one that kind of chosen to go to the performing arts?
Yeah, so no, I was the only one interested at all in that. And actually, my family had no idea why. And I had asked them, it's coming back to me now that my first show was actually at Players Theater, and I have no idea how I found out they were doing a Christmas. Sorry, it was a musical called Scrooge, which was basically a Christmas Carol. No idea how I found out about this, but I wanted to audition for it. Now, my parents owned a gift store. Christmas was the wrong time of year to have their have to drive their little boy to rehearsals. So they didn't want me to do it, and they knew I wouldn't get in it. And so the story my mom told, and I just love this story, is that she drove me there so I could have my heart broken, and she could drive me home, buy me ice cream, and then that would be that, and she'd be free from any responsibility of driving me anywhere during the Christmas season. So she takes me there, and they call my name, and I go onto stage, and completely a cappella, because I didn't know what music was, or piano music or anything. I sang the song from Oklahoma, "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning." And she said, first she was in she was like way in the back row. She said first she was in shock. Her face turned red. She started laughing and then crying because I was like, "Ah!" it was go time for me. I was on Broadway in my head. And I knew so little, but I knew that song. So I got the role of the much maligned brother of Tiny Tim, called Harry Cratchit. Not much of a role, but I was on stage for the first time. And that was when they found out that I was interested in theater and that I could actually do it. And then they were stuck because it was just one show after another, whether it be a show at my high school or a show at a community theater, or I did them all.
Yeah. So when did you kind of decide you wanted to pursue this as a career, or was it never really a question?
Um, it was never a choice that I could pursue it as a career because my family were all business people. And I remember very clearly my father saying, "You're not going into this, you're going to business." But then what happened was I was sort of like, okay, but I just kept doing it and doing theater. And it was so my whole life that there was a moment that I don't even know if we talked about it, but I do recall that probably my junior year, it was just clear. It was like, this is what he's going to do. And so they didn't question it anymore. It was just so obvious that my passion and interest was going to take me to a life in theater. And they had wanted me to go to a theater school where you get like you're also studying something else like business. But then when I got into Carnegie Mellon University, which is a terrific conservatory training program, um, they were like, "Okay, that's a great school, and we're okay with you just learning how to do musical theater." And of course, I didn't even use it much because later I did discover through doing sketch comedy with my pal Seth Rudetsky that really my first love was always television and film, Saturday Night Live, The Carol Burnett Show. So I think I did musical theater because I thought that's what I was allowed to do. And because as a kid in Ohio, in a million years, you don't think you're going to end up in that magical box or on that big screen. And so it just seemed like it wasn't a choice until I was doing a musical and I got an audition for a film project, and then that was that.
Yeah. You had said that you really took a lot of inspiration from the Carol Burnett show and Saturday Night Live. And what were some of your more familiar inspirations in your personal life, more than like in the abstract of Hollywood?
Well, in my personal life, again, like I didn't have much inspiration around me because I just had such a drive to perform. It wasn't like there was anybody saying you should do this. It was just as I was doing theater, I kept meeting people who were interested in it as well, and being especially doing community theater. So because you're around adults who love acting so much that they'll do it for basically for free in Ohio, and you're seeing these, and so those people are not there for a paycheck in community theater. They're there because they love it. And also, it was so fun to go to cast parties with adults because as a kid, that's all you want to do is feel like you're an adult already. Anyway, so it was inspiring to be around the adults I met. And then let me see, in high school, we were like the luckiest school ever because we had a theater teacher who was just the absolute greatest theater teacher. And her name is Bronwyn Hopton. Literally saw her 2 months ago because when I go to Ohio, I always visit her. Kids, the people that had the benefit of having her, they just want to stay friends with their whole life. She's an incredible theater teacher. And what I love about my experience with her was that she inspired me to create my own shows. Like I kind of was from the beginning, but she allowed it and pushed it and said, "Yes, you should create your own show." So I wrote a show with a friend that we put up in my high school. I also created with some friends a Christmas cabaret where kids could just perform sketches on Christmas, and that tradition went on for at least a decade, I know, after I left. So that's a really big deal for a teacher to say, not only I help you do theater, but you can make theater. And I see how grateful I am that I had that voice in high school saying that because I'd been doing it before and I might have stopped if I didn't have someone to push me to continue. And then of course now I continue to make my own content and plays and movies, and that's partly due to the freedom she gave us. So yeah.
Yeah. So what was your college audition experience like when you decided to kind of go for it and go to college for this? Did you audition to a lot of schools?
Um, I really was a dummy about, I didn't know anything. I was in Ohio. I had no one around me who knew how to break into the entertainment industry. I just lucked out because one of the colleges someone told me that I should apply to was Carnegie Mellon University. We didn't have the internet to look up type in what are the best colleges for acting, right? I just happened to audition for them and they ended up being one of the top schools. Most importantly, because they set you up at when you graduated, they took you to New York and they gave you a showcase where you could potentially get an agent, which I did. And that really makes a big difference when schools do that. At least back then it did. And so me having an agent right out of college, just made everything so much easier because I was able to immediately start booking good work. So yeah, it was. I only auditioned for a handful of schools, very few, but I was lucky enough that one of them was CMU.
Yeah. Were there any, when you had gone to college, what do you think the biggest lesson that you learned was while you were there?
Oh gosh, how to learn and how to have a great work ethic. It wasn't very fun. A lot of people, I'll hear about other people's college experience and I'll be like, "Oh, you guys had fun?" Like we didn't. It was hard. Like back then, I have no idea what that school is quite like right now, but it was just really hard and it was constant work, but we did love it. And we were passionate about it, but there just wasn't much time for anything else. But I think that can be a really good thing because, we got out of that training program ready to work and ready to audition. Because boy, oh boy, they really taught us the fundamentals in terms of singing and dance and movement. And so I was able to kill a dance. And by the way, I'm not a good dancer, but I was able to pick up a dance audition. I got an off-Broadway show 1 year after I landed in New York. And I got that because I was picking up steps fast and the acting. But yeah, so anyway, the most important thing I learned, I guess, was that they teach you a lot of stuff you don't need. But I'll never forget this. A teacher said something that I found so powerful and I held on to because my whole take on film acting, not theater acting, but film acting is it's actually very easy. And sadly, a lot of actors make it difficult and therefore not fun. And it should be fun and exciting and easy, but uncomfortable. Anyway, so a teacher said, "You know more than you think you know." And we were doing a Tennessee Williams project, so these were characters that talked differently than us, that lived in a different time. And she said, as opposed to what everyone else was doing at the school, which was good, which was offering us all these different ways you can research and work hard to achieve a performance. What she said was find a photo of from the 40s of what you think your character looked like. Look at the photo. Now you're the character. And I found it to be true. And it was my favorite acting experience at the school. And so I've now gone on and as a hobby, I teach acting, film acting. And that's very much where I come from, which is it's all about playing pretend and trusting and having faith you're the character and understanding that there is a sort of higher power or magic of acting that can guide you through a performance. So that her name was Barbara Mackenzie Wood, and having her direct me in that show and alleviate me from the pressure of doing quote unquote work or book work was an incredibly freeing and important moment in my growth.
Yeah. So what was your journey like going to New York when you had graduated? Would I know, Columbus is a big city, but still nothing like New York. So what was that transition like for you?
Well, I was lucky because going to Carnegie Mellon, I knew people in the city, and also they had guest artists come in. So this wonderful woman named Susan Dansby, who right now she's directing a TV show on the air right now. They have these people come in and they just told you what the real world was like. And Susan Dansby directed the seniors, my class, in a video, like a half-hour drama. And so I felt very ready. And my father loved New York City, and that's where his family was. And so my family would go visit there. So it didn't, I'd been there, but boy, was it a different place. 42nd Street back then, you didn't walk on that street at night. you just didn't when the sun went down, and it was scary during the day. And now you go down that street and it's like, oh, Aladdin and all the theaters and tourists. And also, when I would leave my apartment in the morning, I lived in Hell's Kitchen, there'd be crack vials all over the ground right outside your door. So, like, it's a very different city now, isn't it? But that didn't seem weird. That was because it had been even worse in the 70s. So anyway, as I said, I got lucky and got an agency right away. Back then, they were called Sames and Rolnick, and they were great. And they uh they seemed to understand who I was and like me. And actually my big break in TV and film came because Conan O'Brien, Late Night with Conan O'Brien was brand new at the time. And my agent called me. She said, Late Night with Conan O'Brien is looking for somebody really weird. And we're sending you in because they knew that I could, because that my first off-Broadway show I mentioned you that I got because of the dance audition, that was it was a cult hit. It was quite a hit show where it was a beauty pageant, but all the women were played by men. And I got the role as the understudy for all of the beauty contestants. So they knew I had range and I was also willing to do anything. And so I got that part and I appeared on the Late Night with Conan O'Brien show about, gosh, maybe up to 10 times as this character who was very strange and sang and danced. And it was because I did that that I got my first pilot and they flew me to LA and I stayed. But in terms of any other experiences with New York, for me, it was quite exciting because I never rented an apartment. I didn't have any money. I would just sublet people's couches or their room when they went away. And so in the 3 years I was in New York City, I stayed in 13 apartments. The longest I stayed in an apartment was a month. The shortest time was a week. So I was constantly, so I really got to see every part of New York and experience every way of living in New York, anything from a beautiful one bedroom I had to myself to one of the apartments. I was told I had to sleep in the towel closet. And I just couldn't. I tried, I got in there and it was like really weird and too much like a grave. And so I just went out to the living room and laid on the floor. So it was a fun adventure living in New York.
So what made you decide to go into the Hollywood TV film side of it?
Because as soon as I got that pilot, I was like, wait a minute, I could do TV. And I'll never forget, too, on the plane ride to LA to film it, I heard people behind me talking about a self-help book. And I had just discovered self-help books. And I knew they were something that was very important to me. And and that was a very LA thing to like New York was like keep your head down, do the work and get the money as you can stay. Whereas LA was like let's love our lives and let's love let's love people. And anyway, so to me it was a beautiful sign that I was heading home. And I stayed in LA to this day and I do love LA.
So in an industry that kind of demands, I don't know the film side at all, but in the performing arts and like a Broadway stage, with that industry demanding so much of kind of your emotional or physical energy, how do you kind of have a healthy work-life balance, or what kind of practices or routines do you have to kind of stay grounded and be true to who you are?
Well, I see, I don't feel it that way because to me, I'm getting to do what I love, so I feel like I never work. Trust me, every day I'm grateful that I'm doing what I'm doing and that I got to actually make a living doing what I love because it is so rare. And it's now, listen, I mean, I went through periods where I had to maybe cater in order to support my dreams, but luckily, I most of my life I spent getting paid to do what I love. So, geez, like I love being on set and working, so it doesn't feel like that. However, when I'm not working, that's the trickier thing is how does an actor stay um, in a joyful place when they don't have a job. And what I quickly learned is I don't have to have a job to do what I love. And so I create, I call myself a joyful creator, and that could be a feature film, or that could just be like I have this series of short videos I've been doing where I play all the different Imagineers in 1960s Disneyland. And I love that. And I work my ass off on those. And they mean a lot to me, and they're just as important as any job I've ever had. So I believe that an artist, there's a saying that an actor is always in class. I don't agree with that at all, because I think a teacher made up that. I think an actor is always doing their art. So an actor is always acting. And whether that's doing sketch comedy with your friends or improv or putting up your own show or making a video or stand-up comedy, doesn't matter. Just do what you love, because what you do creates more of it in your life. So if you're acting, you attract more acting to your life because of the partnerships you're making with other actors who don't wait for permission to act. Whereas if you're in class, that really just brings more class into your life, if you ask me, in my opinion.
Yeah. You had said that you had gone into the kind of teaching side a bit of the performing arts. So was there ever a question of maybe I should stop performing and do teaching, or do you just love
No,
having
no.
both?
No, I love, because teaching is just a hobby. Because okay, so I had a lot of anxiety when I was younger. I was sort of raised to be addicted to negative thoughts because of my, the way I was raised. Anyway, so I had to figure out how to let go of anxiety. And so I did. As I said, I spent 15 years studying self-help and people like Marianne Williamson, who at the time was a brilliant speaker and gave me a lot of incredible tools. Most importantly, a book written by Peter McWilliamson called You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought. Anyway, so I took what I was learning from different people and I applied it to my acting. And all of a sudden, I realized I had something I could share with other actors. And I just had to. Now that I had discovered this sort of secret to loving acting again and freeing yourself from all quote unquote nervousness, how could I not want to share that? So I took everything I teach and I wrote it in a free ebook, which is on my website. It's called New Thoughts for Actors. It's there, it's free to read. Everything I teach is free. And then I do these workshops sometimes and lectures sometimes. And uh, but I always thought, maybe when I get too old to act, then maybe I'll open up an acting studio or whatnot. And we'll see. I still have time, but no, I love acting. So yeah, I would never leave it to teach.
Hmm. What does teaching or, kind of doing that kind of mentorship side of it do for you that being on a stage doesn't creatively?
Oh my goodness. I mean, well, listen, I first started teaching children's theater in high school. So it's fascinating. The things you did as a kid that you love your whole life. And so if there's anyone out there who's like, I don't know what to do with my life, what did you enjoy as a kid? Because you still enjoy it now. And then I taught during the summers, I taught children's theater to get through college. And then I returned to it when I started teaching acting in LA. What does it give me? First off, it's so important to give of yourself, to not be selfish in as a human, but to feel good about yourself when you go to bed. And that's what it does, is it makes me feel useful to the planet. And it's a form of love. And as I said, what you put out, you get in return. And so love creates more love in your life. So for me, like my favorite thing, even more than helping actors with, for instance, how do you memorize lines quicker or stuff like that? I did one of my workshops at Screen Actors Guild, my union. They asked me to do it for free. I was happy to. And so last week I did a class and a girl got up to act and her heart was racing and she was breathing fast. And I knew she was going through something big. And that's called a hysterical reaction. Like we all get nervous when we have to stand up and do a scene, but she was more nervous than even the situation called for. So that's called hysterical. There's nothing wrong with that. It just means more emotion than what's needed. And my friend Seth Rudetsky, who was a great mentor to me with mental health stuff, because he also really cares about it, he shared with me something his therapist said, which is if it's hysterical, it's historical. So I was able to get her to talk about what was coming up from her past. And she had a breakthrough right there in the room of a memory from when she was in elementary school of something quite emotionally abusive that was happening to her between the students, but more importantly, the teacher. And it was that moment that she was projecting on her present day that was making her, as she said, I hate when people look at me. She's an actress, but she hates when people look at her. And she was able to remember the moment that happened to her as a kid, that she was projecting on her present day. So she wasn't freaking out because she was standing up in front of me and these students I was with. She was freaking out that she was back there in that classroom with that abusive teacher. And I explained to her all she has to do now is just remind herself every time she's going to perform, they are not that teacher. This is not my childhood, and she'll be free from that. And I know that because I had a similar experience where I was projecting something on my present day, and Seth pointed it out to me, and I was free from it from that moment on. So, moments like that, when you can heal a person's life in that way, or I should say, heal them, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's also fun seeing the breakthrough and seeing what they can do creatively after that as well.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the joy every time. Like when when actors see how easy it is to have the whole scene be better, more joyful, and more emotional, more surprising by simply telling their, I call it your vulture, by simply getting their vulture to shut up. It's wonderful.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit because not only do you perform, you also do a lot behind the scenes in writing. So you directed and co-wrote Disaster with Seth Rudetsky, who you've mentioned a lot. What was that process like for you guys? What made you decide to do that?
Well, I wish I was a person who could start more projects. I'm more a person that loves to see a project that someone's doing and maybe they're struggling or maybe they're not getting it done and then help them. And that's what happened with that is that Seth had this great idea for a musical. He had a lot of these like songs and story points, but he had to write it in 1 month. And he came and visited Palm Springs for his job. And I met him out there and I said, "Well, how soon till this is due?" He said, "A month from now." He had written nothing. So I said, "Oh my God, Seth." And I took out my computer and I opened up a final draft document. And I wrote exterior, Manhattan, a pier. And we just started working. And then we wrote it over the phone over the course of, we got that first draft done. And then we wrote it, over the course of a year. And such a joy working with Seth because I'm more of like we each have our own strengths, and I guess you could say I'm a little bit more sort of like story structure, and he's the funniest person I've ever met. And so if we have a scene, he just takes it and makes it hysterical. And so it was incredible working with him. It's the best thing you can do with a friend is to create something together. And yeah, so I love working with Seth and writing with Seth. It's heaven.
So what does being on kind of the other side of the table, not, being a performer, but kind of the mind behind it, what does that do for you creatively? Is it like a whole different world of creativity than
Oh
performing
no, I mean,
something?
as I said, I feel like my purpose in life is to be a joyful creator. So it scratches the same itch. Creating is creating, moving energy is what I do and love. But directing is harder, a lot more work, and they're very different directing theater and film, very different animals. Theater directing is quite lonely because all the actors are on stage and you're kind of in the dark with this pad of paper writing your notes down. Whereas, and this is not a put down in any way, but to me, I kind of would say that theater directing is akin to like having all these gerbils or mice on a table and just like keeping them on the table. Whereas film directing is kind of like you arrive to the set in the morning, you've got like 100-piece puzzle or 1,000-piece puzzle, and you dump it on the floor. And then you've got however many of the days to get as much of the puzzle finished as you can. And any part of the puzzle you didn't finish, you never will. So they're very different, but the difference in terms of being lonely is that in film directing you're never lonely because you really are the center of all of these people, and your job is that all these different people come up to you and ask you questions, and your job is to have an answer or at least your strong opinion to guide the film in the direction that you see it, and also while also trusting their opinions and giving them space to create. So they're very different animals. I think if I had to choose, I think film directing is a little more my thing. But it's, the amount of money you have to put the money together. You have to take such enormous risks and much more difficult to get that train moving because of the money involved.
Yeah. So when there were times that you weren't always, you'd kind of mentioned it earlier, but when there were times that you weren't always booking a job or working on a project, and you kind of had that survival job, you had mentioned you had like catered some things. How did you kind of get through those tougher times and those kind of dry spells when you weren't booking jobs?
You have to get your head together. You have to understand there's a higher plan unfolding for you for your greatest good, and that you were meant to have this time to either re-energize or to force you to maybe create something on your own. An artist has to understand that an artist's career has mountains and valleys, and when you're in the valley, you have to trust that the mountaintop is coming. And so this is all work that I did through self-help and getting control of my vulture, my negative, mean-spirited vulture or ego, and finding joy, so that those moments when I'm not working, I am creating the play, which was for me called Space Station 79, which later I was able to adapt into a screenplay, and Sony Pictures bought it, and it's now, you can stream it and watch it. It's called Space Station 76. And I wouldn't have been able to direct my feature film with Patrick Wilson, Matt Bomer, Liv Tyler if I hadn't had that free time to write that play with my friends.
Yeah.
So everything happens as it's meant to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So
But
I
keep
just
going
have,
for what you want. Keep asking for what you want. Keep going for it, but don't be attached to what you think it's supposed to look like.
yeah, you never know what's around the corner.
Mhm.
Um, so I have just a couple more questions before we kind of wrap up the conversation. These are kind of the more cliche questions that I like to ask. Um, so if you were to be giving your Tony speech right now, there's no music to cut you off. There's no time limit on this. Who would be the people that you mentioned in your speech that helped get you where you were today?
Well, I mean, I've said them already, but I'll just say again. I want to thank, gosh, I guess I would just say so grateful for the town of Old Worthington and the school system there, because they cared about art, they cared about theater, they cared about their students when I was there, and especially Bronwyn Hopton, my theater teacher, and all of the people who believed in me when I was young and allowed me to do all those shows. In particular, my parents, uh, Sue and Harvey, who drove me to the rehearsals and saw that I was an artist, and didn't force me to work in the store when I was in, because they could have said, you can't do that show, we need you at the store. And so that was really beautiful that they said, oh, he this is where he's really happy. um and then every manager I've had, and agent, of course, because that's a big deal that they said, like, we get this guy. And so my definitely my managers and agents, and you don't need to list that, but and then I would say there are these people in my life who gave me opportunities that were really big, and so in a way they took a real risk on me. And so first off, I'd say Richard Day, who wrote a feature film and paid for it, and it's called Girls Will Be Girls, and I played the lead, and it's on Netflix now, only for another 2 weeks. So hurry up and see it. I play like an 80-year-old washed up alcoholic actress in this movie, and it's like John Waters level humor. It's really funny and really sick. So him doing that with his own money and giving me that role, that we all won awards for our performances, and it's one of the absolute joys of my life was making that. And then Quentin Dupieux gave me the lead in his movie called Wrong, after I played a smaller role in his movie Rubber. And so him seeing me and believing in me and writing the movie Wrong in a way for me and just offering me that role was one of just the most incredible experiences of my life. And on top of that, he and Richard are my they are my inspirations. They're such kind, creative people doing the art for the sake of art. And if I hadn't done those two experiences with those two directors, I don't think I would have believed that I could direct my movie Space Station 76. And so they also were very much a part of me getting to do that, which I mean, making that show and Disaster with Seth around the same time are like they're my babies and they mean so much to me. And those two men really inspired me to believe that a little old actor could say, I can create this big thing, this Broadway musical or this feature film. And obviously Seth Rudetsky, who is my comedy partner and who is just constant inspiration for me as a creative person, but on top of that, as an activist, he is a huge activist and always speaks up for the underdog and for truth, truth to power. And so he's inspired me to do that. And I think I'll just stop there because that's a lot and I don't want to bore anyone. But yeah, so it's important to be grateful, though. I love that you give your guests that opportunity. I try to start every morning, try not to like get out of bed before I've reminded myself how grateful I am for life, because it really is the secret to happiness. Is
Yeah.
I like to say I'm grateful for all the good in my life and I'm worthy of all the good in my life. And I love to say I forgive myself unconditionally.
Yeah. I think those are important things to remember that, you've earned where you are today, and I think we kind of forget that sometimes. So reminding yourself that you're worthy of it, I think is a great thing to do every morning.
Yeah, just you're worthy of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
We get so mad at ourselves about stupid things. It's very easy to, you don't deserve to be happy today because you didn't do A, B, or C. And it's like, no, no, no. You deserve to be happy for no reason. I love the phrase, I'm going to be unreasonably happy.
So, if there were to be one person in the performance world, either in film, TV, whatever, or in New York, that I could interview like this, kind of learning their history or learning kind of their backstory that you might think has a cool story, who do you think would be a fun person's story to listen to?
Well, I mean, I guess I'll just put it back on Seth because he mentioned me. But truly, I think that's somebody who such an opposite story than mine because I went to like the school for musical theater and then I went into musical theater and he is such a Renaissance man and does everything and does it so well. And his journey there is so it proves that there's no one way or no correct way to have a career in the arts. So I'm always very inspired by him and that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also important to show that, like you said, there is no right way to get into it. Anyone with this dream can do it.
Yes, 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 yes. So many actors never trained at all. Now, if you want to be a theater actor or a musical theater actor, you do have to train. It doesn't have to be at a college, but you have to train. But film acting, you don't even have to train. I mean, just do it. Just start acting on film. See if you love it.
So one of the last things that I have, we kind of heard that this isn't always the easiest career field to go into. There's ups and downs and ebbs and flows of booking the jobs and having a dry spell. So if there was one thing that you could tell the listeners to kind of help them stay motivated, stay focused on
Oh, I
their
love
goal,
that. Okay,
even when the
well,
road gets tough.
as I said, I have a free ebook on my website, which is jackplotnick.com. It's called New Thoughts for Actors. And any question anyone artist could have, there's a chapter on it. And so in my book, there's a chapter called How to Build a Career. And everything I teach about that is there in that. So I would just say I'd love if you're looking for answers or if you just deal with anxiety and you'd like to get control of that, that's in the first two chapters of my book. So everything I share is there and you'll find it really helpful.
Yeah, yeah, definitely have to get into that and because I think there's always a lot of great information, especially from people who have lived the industry or lived the struggle in one way or another. There's strength in numbers when it comes to stuff like emotional things, and you don't feel quite as alone.
Yes, anything you're going through, someone's been through and they've written down how they got through it. So So understand that your brain is like a camera. You might as well read the instruction manual on how to use it.
Yeah. So the last thing I have to close out our conversation is our rapid fire question segment. They are not theater specific. They're just questions that I always think are kind of fun to ask people to kind of to wrap up the conversation. So are you ready for
Awesome.
some rapid fire questions?
Yeah, sure.
All right, perfect. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Summer or winter?
Winter. I don't like summer. I don't like bright sunlight. I don't like wearing sunscreen. Oh my God. I would much rather, yeah, especially LA winters, because LA winter is everywhere else is spring and it's just gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah. Dream vacation.
Oh, I guess maybe going back in time and being with my family at Disney World, because that was our happy place. So,
Book or movie?
movie. Stopped reading books 6 years ago. I don't know what's going on with that. I think the whole world has a internet and yeah, TikTok's killed it. But no, I hope they'll survive, I hope.
Yeah. Pizza or pasta?
Pasta. I don't care for pizza. It's dry usually, but yeah, so gotta be pasta. I love pasta.
Okay. I feel like I know the answer to this one. Comedy or horror?
Oh gosh, I like them both. But yeah, so maybe horror.
Oh, okay. Thought you were
Yeah,
gonna go
yeah.
comedy.
I mean, I want to do comedy, but I just really enjoy watching horror.
Okay.
As long as nobody good is suffering. And so that makes it hard to find horror movies I enjoy because a lot
Yeah.
of them have people suffering.
Yeah.
So maybe I have to say comedy.
A kind of roundabout way of saying comedy.
Yep.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset, definitely, because I'm not a morning person, never see the sunrise. I'm told it looks a lot like a sunset, but I'm gonna stick with my sunsets.
Last one, super strength or invisibility?
Oh, that's neat. I guess super strength, I could do some really cool things with that.
Yeah.
Like help people, I could save people. I'm gonna decide that you also let me have the power of flight. And so I'm really excited about that. That's gonna be cool. Thank you. When do I get that? Is that like a coupon? Go to
That'd be so cool, right? I like email a voucher to you and all of a sudden it's there.
Strength. Love it.
Well, that is all.
Well,
I th
yeah,
thank you
this has
so
been a
much for
joy,
being
CJ.
on.
Thank you for
Yeah.
taking me down this walk down memory lane. It's been so fun.
Yeah, of course. Are there any projects right now that you're working on that you'd like to kind of plug or promote?
Well, everything I do is you can find on my website, which is jackplotnick.com, including my ebook, information about Disaster, the musical I wrote, which your local community theater or your high school or anyone can do it now, and it's such fun. You really should. It's got 14 amazing lead roles. Everyone has a solo. It's great. Then, as I said, my movie Girls Be Girls is on Netflix. Space Station 76 you can watch anywhere, and the I just completed my eight-part miniseries of my Disney mystery thriller. So if you go to my YouTube, you can watch all those episodes, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, it's been so great getting to chat with you. So I don't want to keep you any longer. I know I don't want to hold you up for the
Okay.
rest of your plans today. So
Well, I'm wishing you all the very best, CJ. I love what you're doing with this. I think it's really cool.
thank you. Thank you. It means a lot. So well, I'm sure we will chat later. So I will let you go for today and thanks again for being on.
Oh, my pleasure. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
It was so much fun getting to talk with Jack and hear his story from Ohio, but also where he is now, kind of how he got into the acting gig, the both on stage but and on the screen as well, and also his love for things outside of the on stage or on screen performance, like teaching or writing or directing and stuff like that. So it's so interesting to get to hear all the different facets of his life. So tune in next week. We have some more amazing guests coming up, you guys. You are not even ready for some of these. So tune in next week to find out where it all began.